Hey everybody, welcome to the Hope Podcast. Today we have Representative Mark Thompson up from, I think, just west of Clear Lake, right?
South of Clear Lake.
South of Clear Lake. And what is your district?
56.
District 56.
Hancock, Wright County, and Humboldt County.
Okay, well, welcome to the show. I'm glad you made it.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, would you mind by just introducing yourself, but kind of maybe like, well, what got you into politics? Just so everybody knows, Mark is probably still exhausted from coming off nearly 40 hours consecutive grind in the Iowa Capitol building as the session kind of finished up. So thank you for just persevering and putting yourself through this. We appreciate it, the people of Iowa. But yeah, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what got you into politics, who you are?
I grew up on a farm outside of Eagle Grove. Went to college, commissioned in the Marine Corps for 20 years, and then at the end of that went to the counter-terrorism community and responded to terrorist events overseas for about 18 years, and then
almost 40 years in the government.
Federal side,
Yep.
and then came back to Iowa thinking it was going to look like Norman Rockwell. And then I discovered it wasn't.
What do you mean by Norman Rockwell?
Well, I'm old enough to appreciate his paintings. You know, It's a Wonderful Life, if you remember that movie.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of the genre.
For all of you Gen Zers, I think they still play that on, isn't it Thanksgiving
Christmas.
Day? Or Christmas, yeah,
Christmas.
Okay. Yeah, they play. It's a wonderful, it's old black and white Jimmy Stewart movie. It's great.
And if you remember Potterville, if Jimmy Stewart hadn't done what he'd done, it's the bifurcation of his life. Whether you could be, you could have not done this, or you could have done this. You chose the right thing to do, and you saved your town. And the other side of that, when they didn't fix the problem in the town, then Potterville became the town, which was full of dance halls and bars and all kinds of other bad places. And that's what I kind of saw in the county, was in the region, because my first exposure really for real of human trafficking was the labor trafficking of a guy named Jack DeCoster that came in there in the 90s when I was overseas doing other stuff.
In your county, though?
Yeah, in Wright County.
Okay.
And then some people came up to me and said, "We got to do something about this." And I go,
What was this? Can you tell us the background of what happened there? And
well, Jack DeCoster had a chicken operation that involved millions of chickens laying eggs.
Okay.
Millions of chickens create millions of tons of waste.
Of course.
And that has to be handled by somebody. Mm-hmm. So he exploited people coming across the border to do that, whether they came across legally or illegally. Mm-hmm. And then there were children involved in that that were
Is this the thing that was in the news, Postville or something? Is that a separate deal?
It's separate but related. Okay. Postville was a kosher chicken place, I think, that they raided it, hauled people away. But they'd always haul people away with dark skin, not the people that were running it, that were dressed like me. And that's a problem. So DeCoster had done the same thing in North Carolina and Maine. In fact, when we lived in Camp Lejeune, or soon after, a dike broke there that was holding back all the waste material, and got into the Cape Fear River, killed millions of fish. So he moved to Maine.
Oh, so these guys just do this, and then the water gets hot, and some of their workers get arrested. They get either a slap on the wrist or nothing, and they skip town.
That's about it. So in his case, it's big money. So if you have 1 million chickens, they eat a lot of crushed up corn. So that all looked good for the corn economy. And so and he donated here and he donated there, and it looked good. And he bought land from people who might have been involved in government at the time, and it was just a mess. So I got involved.
Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on, some of the things that were wrong? Because I know trafficking and the ending of slavery is a big thing for you.
When you giving people barely a subsistence wage, barely, and then renting out a facility that looks like a hog house itself
for them to live in.
For them to live in is wrong on anything.
And does this come about, like, what comes to my mind is like, and I'm just probably ignorant about this, so please don't take offense, but like, okay, these people, something makes them choose to do this, or are they actually compelled by some form of blackmail or threats of violence, or like what leads the workers to get tangled up in a situation like that?
Well, I should have asked you to watch Rape in the Fields and Trafficked in America, which are two PBS documentaries that highlight Wright County.
Okay. We'll say those again. Okay.
Rape in the Fields, which was in 2013.
Okay.
And Trafficked in America, which was about 2018.
Okay.
The first one, at about the 20-minute mark, highlights Wright County and what was going on there, and the fact that people come up with promises, and it's the communication back into in many places in Central America. It's gone beyond Mexico now. Central America saying, "Hey, this is a good deal. You can take care of your family." Mm-hmm. And in Trafficked in America, it follows a 14-year-old boy from the hills of Guatemala, hills meaning about 4 acres of hills that they're trying to make a living off from, and this 14-year-old boy can contribute to that. Wow, what a deal! Go on up. He first ends up in Ohio, and then he ends up in
and the way he gets across the border is probably through the cartels, yes, I'm assuming. Yeah.
And
he owes them money by the time he's across the border.
Yes, and
being across the border isn't necessarily protection from the cartels.
So anything that comes across the border is taxed by the cartels before this administration. Mm-hmm. So they
including a human being.
Yes, anything, anybody, any object. So they're brought up here under false pretenses, and then they're here, and that like, well, now you owe us for lodging, you owe us for meals, you owe us for transportation, yep. And of course you got to wonder how anybody travels from Central America all the way through Mexico to the Rio Grande. That's not a cheap enterprise.
Yeah.
That's not hitchhiking. And when you see all the stuff on the TV about this, you just got to ask, where's the money that makes this happen?
Exactly.
Well,
I mean, I just a short side story. My one of my attorneys was defending me for the January 6th stuff out in Washington. Well, she had formerly worked for the first Trump administration, and she talked about working with, ending the reasons why it was important to close the border, and one of her jobs was working with these kids, families, stuff that had been trafficked up by the cartels. And yeah, they tell them a great story. And then by the time the girl gets here, she's been raped every night for months. And they may be addicted to drugs. And, on the sex slavery side, they just, shove them right down that road, and then they rent them out in a hotel room or whatever. But on the labor side, it's the same deal. You are somehow, the cartel gets their claws into you. Yeah. And then you owe them big time.
And in this case, they come up. My county right now is over 40% English language learning, which equates to Hispanic children.
Yeah.
And those children had no choice about coming up here. They're often come out. One of the more heartrending little stories I have is a few years ago was teaching what we call Youth Faith Foundation in the Catholic Church. So Wednesday night we have, the equivalent of Sunday school on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And at the end I wanted them to, look at what they'd learned about the gospel and about our faith, and say we have to have more faith than fear. So I just rhetorically asked, how many, what do you think you're afraid of? And I said, please don't belt it out. Just think about what concerns you and how you can use your faith to overcome that. Yeah. And of course, you're sixth graders, and sixth graders will belt anything out at any time. So they were doing that, and people were kind of laughing. And then this little girl, 12-year-old girl, sitting next to me looks up at me and says, "Being left." I said, I'm kind of taken aback, and I'm going, "Well, do you mean being left behind when you've been?" Yes. And I didn't. I wasn't going to have this long discussion with her in front of the other children, but I knew the school counselor real well, and I asked her to kind of accidentally on purpose check her out the next day and how she's doing. And I've checked more recently, and apparently she's doing much better. But you don't know what those children have gone through, and that really, grates me. I've got other counties in my district that it's 5%, and the only difference is the draw of confined livestock.
Oh,
and
really?
that's the draw, because confined livestock takes a lot of labor.
Okay.
And you want to cheapen up the labor, you do this. We have
you bring in people who are vulnerable,
yes.
basically, either with the legal stamp from the government or the illegal stamp. Actually, the illegal stamp is kind of more advantageous from a business perspective because you can hang that over their head, right?
And they do routinely.
Yeah, because it'd be a real shame if ICE just accidentally got called on you or whatever.
And that's what happened a lot.
Yeah.
So now we have Prestige south of Eagle Grove.
But that's so corrupt from a business owner's perspective, because they actually aren't wanting our borders secure for a good reason. It's actually a major advantage because they have vulnerable people who they can treat as slaves and then weaponize the law, hold it over them like the sword of Damocles.
Yeah, so I've talked to the people that took over from DeCoster. He and his son still lives there, but his Jack DeCoster went off, and he's in his 80s now, and probably doesn't want to be seen. But
okay, well, but tell us what happened with there. So was he able just to retire and go off into the sunset, or was there a big scandal, or
the only thing he was held accountable for was salmonella.
Okay.
So a few years ago,
I think, was there a big raid? Did people get deported? Nothing like that. Okay.
Nothing like Postville.
Okay.
Nothing like Postville. I don't think anything close to it. So he and his son were held accountable for salmonella, obviously getting people sick at a massive rate. I think that was before we even got back here. We got back here 10 years ago. Okay. So he got in federal court, got charged with some charge that said you allowed salmonella in your plant, and he and his son
it's probably just civil. It's not criminal.
Served consecutive, not concurrent, but consecutive 6-month stints in a federal prison in southeast Minnesota.
Oh, so he did have to go to prison
for 6 months, but not for
probably the same federal prison I was in Rochester. That's where I was.
It might have been.
Yeah.
He got, but no accountability for what you see in those films I just mentioned.
Yeah.
None of that. So.
Can you just tell people? I mean, I know it can be hard to talk about. Like, what are people going to see in those films? Like what's going on?
That the conditions in which these people work, the fact that women in the process of being told to clean eggs are pushed back into a room and sexually assaulted, children that go to school in the daytime and work at night. Till wee hours of the morning, and then we wonder. Well, I was a sub teacher, and in one particular day, it was high school. I told this young man to wake up in class. He wasn't staying awake, and I knew why. I knew what the problem was, and he goes, "Well," and he did it like 3 or 4 times, and I said, "Well, now you need to stand up." And he got pretty upset with me and said something I wouldn't repeat on the air, and. I said, well, now you need to go to the principal's office and tell him what your problem is. Mm-hmm. And principal looked me up over the noon hour and said, well, that young man works all night, and his guardian is this is a high school student, his guardian is a 19-year-old female. Mm-hmm. Well, nothing could go wrong there, of course.
Right.
So, but that's where these youngsters are, and everybody's got to contribute and everything. And then at the same time, we have people in the community that think anybody that is in the community that is there is quote unquote an immigrant. Well, there's a difference between immigrant or they're a refugee. Well, refugees have legal definitions.
Yeah, okay.
And immigrants have legal definitions. And if you don't fit one of those two definitions, you're basically here illegally.
Okay, there's legal immigrants, there's legal refugees, and then there's illegal everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
And technically, they're referred to as illegal aliens. People get upset about that because we're offending people. Well, we're not offending people. We're just using the right definitions.
Yep.
And I go back to the children again. They don't have a choice.
Yep.
They end up here because they got drug up here. You've already talked about what happens at the border in 2023, summer of 2023. We went down to the border. I had met a sheriff from Texas, Brooke County, Texas, and he had arranged for us, myself, and about 6 other legislators to go down there. And
Helena, talked. Did she go with you,
Yeah.
Helena Hayes?
Helena
Yeah, she was
went with-
mentioning that the other day when she was here.
And we saw what was going on at the border. Look across the Rio Grande.
What did you see? Like what?
Well, you see thousands of people stacked up over there with cell phones, and then on the Mexico side and on the Texas side.
You're just looking across the Rio Grande.
Yes, and right there it was fairly narrow, and you've got Border Patrol, you've got Texas Rangers, and then you have you even have people National Guardsmen borrowed from other states. Florida National Guardsmen were there while we were there, and they're there to keep these people out. But the point is that they're led across. They were being led across. It's just in a more controlled fashion. There was no documentation. Just get in.
I mean, one of the things that I realized when I started looking into the immigration thing, because I was going back years ago, this is my own naivete, but I was kind of hey, we're all, I'm Irish. Like, my family came over during the potato famine. It was really rough in Ireland at that time. Wasn't it nice that America did that for us? Shouldn't we be open? Well, and allow people to come here, because I was kind of believed the mainstream lie that is we're the land of opportunity and how dare we, close this off. But as I looked into it more, what I found out is laundering a human being across a border gets them off the books legally. Yes. So then you can do it. It's like money that gets laundered. Once it's laundered, then you can do whatever you want with that money. That's how people treat human beings when they do that.
Or a car that has no serial number on it.
Yeah.
Or because you can't track that car, you can't track that human being. So when the first Trump administration was here, we took DNA samples of every person, so that if I'm the child and you're the adult, and they DNA test us, and if our DNA doesn't come up to be like that, yeah, they're connected genetically, then child goes over here, adult goes over here, and that's where
because the cartels will just lie, basically. This is my family, and
then the other part of that was the left would say, well, they're separating families. Actually, that's not a family. So you're not separating a family when it's not a family.
Right.
You're protecting the child.
Yeah.
So when
but they'll say anything. They don't care.
When the Biden administration came in, they took away DNA testing, and they took away basically all enforcement of what it means to actually try to immigrate into our nation.
Now, why take away the DNA testing? That seems like benign.
Well, because there's no record of those people. There's no record of that child.
Because the point is to get them to be undocumented. Because when someone is undocumented, there is no government responsible to protect that person.
And by conservative estimates, there's over 400,000 children undocumented. And I think those are very conservative estimates, and upwards to 10 million.
Yeah, the entire point is to have them be not documented. So how would we have a count?
So I'm. After we got back, myself and another legislator who happens to be Catholic as well, went up to the diocese in Dubuque and said, Catholic Social Services is running a operation down there that's despicable. It's despicable.
So how were they connected to it?
Well, you've seen this a little bit since Trump got back into office, but NGOs, and if you hear NGO, you should start checking your pocketbook, basically, because non-governmental organizations is...
Or a nonprofit.
Well, but the key is non-governmental.
Okay.
There's a profit in there. Oh. There's a big profit.
Got it. Okay.
So...
But they typically have nonprofit status as far as the IRS is concerned.
That's very convenient. But $1,500 per person per day for 3 days. The NGOs get
from
our government.
Our government pays for this,
and so they were.
So our government is more or less funding the slave trade.
Yeah. So we were. We showed up at their place in McAllen, Texas, and watched this go on. And you know the buses, which have blacked out windows and all that sort of thing, so you can't see burly men escorting children on their children, adults, everything, and to parts unknown. Just you get on the bus, we're going to get you out of Texas.
And this isn't the U.S. government doing this; it's what do you call it? Not Catholic Charities. You said another one.
Well, non-government organization.
Okay, so any one of you
it
had
could
come
be,
across one that was Catholic, but there was probably
the,
Red Cross and a million others.
Lutheran, Jewish, all kinds of things.
Okay.
And the point is, and when I brought that up with the Archbishop, it was, well, they're not really directly associated with us. And I said, well, then you better get them for patent copyright infringement or something, because they're using that term, and it's making this church that I care much about, look bad, and not just look bad, is bad. So, and then you go back to April of 2021, and there was a report, and it didn't last very long in the news. I'm going to look it up over the summer with whatever I need to do. Plane loads of children came into Des Moines Airport to parts unknown, and just
flown in by an NGO.
I wish I knew.
How did you hear about that?
It was in the Iowa Standard.
Okay, Jacob Hall dug that up. Well, good for him.
And so very little reporting on it. The governor was outraged or whatever. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Nobody got to the bottom of anything, and so there was at least 2 plane loads of those. Buses were waiting for them. Buses went out to the tarmac. Well, just to do that.
So there was a plan.
Yeah, there was a plan. And you don't put buses on the tarmac of any airport these days.
Nobody's ever picked me up from the tarmac.
So that reeks of something that deserves to be investigated.
Yeah, why does it have to be in darkness? If it was all above board, why can't these kids just, go walk off the jet bridge like everybody else?
Makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder more.
Yeah.
So those, going back to why...
Yeah, it's right here in Des Moines that was happening.
And it happened around the nation. I mean, that's how
I heard about it in, like, Chicago and New York and stuff. Like, this is our bad in Iowa, but, like, we kind of think of ourselves as, like, we're the Shire, the hobbits. Oh, yeah, sounds like that sounds like a problem for, like, the big people in like New York and California and Texas. Like that could never happen here.
Well, and that goes to human trafficking at large. But going back to how I got into this new arena, that was one thing. And then I look at Abbey Gate, what happened in Afghanistan with my Marine Corps and how they were left there in just horrible situation.
A lot of people who watch this are young people who don't know. So can you just tell us, like, what do you know about that, and what?
Well, in August of 2021, Biden's administration wanted to get out of Afghanistan by any means, and it needed to be a planned and controlled withdrawal if we were going to get out of there. And it's based on, and again, I forget that we got into Afghanistan 23 years ago. Yeah. And that's
logistically, it's really hard because there's no, like, land exit, right? Well, everybody had to get flown out.
Well, and I mean, tactically, strategically, it was bad. Our whole effort in Afghanistan and Iraq was on a false premise. Going into Afghanistan, going after people that were responsible for 9/11, or who we thought were responsible for 9/11, had its merit. But after we did that, we're not going to change Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Afghanistan has beaten the dickens out of the Brits. I was in the Khyber Pass between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
What if you have like big pharmaceutical companies that need massive supplies of poppies?
Well, I don't even think it goes that far.
Okay, all right.
But
we won't go there.
But I was on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border in 2000 or 1999, and you go to the Khyber Pass, and there's a plaque there that is there in honor of a British doctor who was allowed to leave Afghanistan when the Afghanis overran the British forces and said, "You're going to go and you're going to go tell them what happened here." Mm-hmm. He was the only survivor just because they allowed him to be a survivor. Mm-hmm. And this basically says, this is what happens to people who try to come into Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. So that was like in 1845 or something. Yeah. And it hasn't gotten any better since then. And when you look at what happens in Afghanistan on a daily basis, the treatment of children and women and everything else, we should have gone in there, got the people responsible, and left. But we thought
the proper thing for us to do was an execution operation.
And
Bin Laden or whoever we had as our targets that we were holding responsible.
But when we made it into, we're going to turn them into us, we're not going to turn them into us. You don't turn people that are that radical Islamic terrorist into a
well,
a
it's
real
this
government.
whole like false assumption that we've been sold that like, well, everybody's good on the inside if we just give them a chance, right? That's kind of what feeds the left wing woke mindset. It's like, if you don't have God in you, you are gonna be a slave to your sin, and it's just there's just no getting out of that.
Well, so we had stayed there far too long, and after you stay there far too long, it gets harder and harder to leave because you leave so much of your investment there, people, equipment, everything. But Biden says, I'm going to be out by this date. Well, first off, tactically and strategically, that's a stupid thing to say. So you're telling the enemy.
Keep that in the dark no matter what. Yeah.
So I think it was the 22nd of August, 2021, somewhere in that, give or take a few days, we just decided we're going to get everybody out. And the Marines had been sent in to protect the perimeter of the airport in Kabul. They were dealing with mothers who were giving them their babies to save on the way out, and any man worth his salt is going to say, yes, I want to save this innocent child. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to do that, and they were gathered at this one location on the perimeter of the airport, and a suicide bomber came in and killed 13 of them. I think there was one sailor, one soldier in the mix, and the rest were Marines. There was a sniper there, a Marine sniper, who was surveilling all this. Mm-hmm. Up to that point, he's testified before Congress saying that he saw the guy, and he asked to take a shot. They wouldn't let him take a shot. He had all the characteristics of a suicide bomber, and he wasn't able to engage him.
It didn't even have to happen.
No, it didn't have to happen. So that, and then when I came back, I was asked to give some remarks at Memorial Days and Veterans Days and places like that, and I went back to Teddy Roosevelt's speech in Paris, I think in 1910, about the man in the arena.
Yeah.
And better to try and fail than not to try, and you're a much better man if you do that than if you just And basically my comparison to that is, somebody that knows nothing about football. He's the fat guy in the stands that tells the high school football coach he's doing everything wrong.
Mm-hmm. And it's easy to criticize.
And has never been on the field himself.
Yep.
And so
doesn't know what it's
this
like.
is the new field for me. But and I needed a challenge. I don't do well without a challenge, and that's why I started as a youth, did that, and.
Well, yeah, I mean, you spent 20 years in the Marines, right? And what were you commissioned or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, what rank did you leave
as a major?
As a major. So, and they wouldn't let you leave, if I remember reading your website right. Or, I mean, they asked you to stay on at counter-terrorism, huh?
I went there at the end of my Marine Corps career, and they asked me to stay as a civilian, so I stayed as a civilian.
And you served 18 more years.
Yeah. So, So I can't sit around, as I say, throwing my coffee cup at the TV. Not that I watch TV anymore, but when I see the news, I get all frustrated with the news. And so if you're not trying to fix it, then you shouldn't be griping about it. It's kind of my.
I thank you for that, and thank you for just staying in the trenches for 20 years in the Marines. I'm sure there's I've got a lot of friends who've been family that have been Marines and or are Marines, and military politics is not always pretty like anything else. And,
but I ran into guys there that I didn't get along with, basically because of their moral turpitude. And when you work for somebody like that, you don't end up going very far if you challenge them. And I challenged them, and I don't have any regrets. It just meant that I had to go do something else, and something else was a civilian at the State Department, and then. I ran afoul with people over Benghazi, and I had to leave the State Department. And so here I am doing this.
This is kind of an interesting thing that we in the news recently. People are talking about the deep state and all this stuff. And what the hard thing you're describing is like, well, I kept trying to do the right thing, and that kept getting me into trouble. So there's this force in, against us in our government that, like, I think the objective is to, do whatever their objectives are, but also to make it so miserable for we who are God-fearing patriots who want to do what's right and fight for America, to make it so miserable for us to exist in positions of authority and power, influence, that we just want to leave, and, I guess it's. I mean, is that true? I mean, is it? I mean, it's.
Well, I after in the Marine Corps, I had told more than one reporting senior, as we call them, that I wasn't going to do something that was immoral and illegal. Mm-hmm. And the details are the details, but that there's a way to. Punish someone for that without writing a totally bad fitness report, because if you don't have a stellar fitness report, as in stellar, then you don't get promoted, and so you have to eventually go. So I for 20 years, if you're being promoted on time, you're a lieutenant colonel at 20 years. I was a major, so I didn't get there, and as fate would have it, as God would have it, I met a guy who said, well, you need to come over here, and he was a former Marine, and so the Marine Mafia helped me out in that regard, and to come to the state, and he also helped me transition to the civilian side, and then eventually
working in Washington.
Well, deployed a lot out of there.
Deployed a lot. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then eventually I became a senior executive. Which is the civilian equivalent of a general officer in that position. And then a few years after that, Benghazi happened, and they wanted to do everything possible to ruin my reputation and everything else. So then I had to go down the legal route after I went through all the inspector general and all the people that were supposed to be taking care of poor little old people like me.
Yeah,
and didn't.
Don't we have whistleblower protections?
And so
I learned all about how our government protects your rights.
So, believe it or not, does Linda Tripp ring a bell?
Yeah. Attorney General?
No,
is that right? Or
no,
was she,
Linda Tripp was a whistleblower during the Clinton administration.
Oh, okay.
And she was. She ended up testifying as to his moral shortcomings. And she got targeted, and she got outed by the administration to the extent that she brought suit against them. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really messed with her life a lot. So
yeah, I mean, these people are vicious. It doesn't care. They don't care.
I mean,
they don't care about the law. They don't care about justice, righteousness, none of that.
Just as a side note, she knew Vince Foster. So
Vince Foster, for those who don't know, is one of the dozens of Clinton associates who have just happened to have committed suicide.
Well,
he probably had one of the suicides with like 2 bullets in his head and like cyanide and 5,000 other things.
Actually, he was found in Fort Marcy Park with his head downhill from his feet downhill from his head, and yet there was blood running up his head in the opposite direction. Yeah, so go figure. Anyway, so
standard op for a Clinton associate.
She knew him, and she'd seen him over the noon hour. You know, just fine. Helped him get lunch in his office and everything, and was very particular about what was on his sandwich and all this. And she's thinking, why would somebody that was so particular about what was on his sandwich go out and do that to himself?
Yeah, somebody who's on the verge of that, you're not thinking about.
So she was
a.
So when I got to the point where the only course I could take was to get legal representation, like non-governmental legal representation.
Yeah, because they'll give you. Yeah, the government, no doubt, offered you a plant, right?
Well, not even that. I didn't. Not. But there was, this process and that process, and they just didn't want to do anything, and they were told not to do anything. So But
there's a legal way to not do anything, right? It's called delay and obfuscate and
basically. Yeah. So my wife came up with the idea. Well, who's had this kind of issue before? Oh, Linda Tripp. She lives around here. So she literally cold calls her.
Yeah.
And gets her on the phone, and she says, "I'll call you back." Well, she must have done her own research. Which
she's like,
So she looks up.
I've been around the block. I'm not just going to tell her.
So this was testified in 2012. This was in early 2015.
You testified in 2012?
Yes.
Okay.
Benghazi happened on 9/11, 2011.
Could you take just a little side trip and tell us, like, okay, what happened in Benghazi? And then what was what led you to blow the whistle on what you saw that was inappropriate?
We had bombed Libya a few months prior to that. We had bombed to the extent that we killed Gaddafi, the head of Libya, who had been there for like 40 years.
Benghazi is in Libya. Yep.
So if you look at the map of North Africa, you see part of that coast is Libya, and on the west side is Tripoli, and on the east side, on the other side, is Benghazi. Well, every time we have diplomatic presence in a country, there's an embassy there. If it's big enough, there's also a consulate. Like in places like Russia, there's consulates. In places like China,
so there's an embassy in the capital and a consulate for every other big city.
Yeah, well, not every one, but selective ones. So there's like 2 or 3 in Pakistan, other than Islamabad.
Okay.
In Peshawar and Karachi and places like that, Lahore. So in there.
This is a State Department facility that facilitates the interactions that the United States has with this nation.
And there's representatives from all kinds of federal, like the FBI may have a legal attaché there, defense attaché from the military, even agricultural attachés, all kinds of different
this
things.
Is like it's the base of operations for Americans to conduct business, law enforcement, anything with trade with this nation. Yep.
And we hadn't had it there that long because we'd just gotten back into Tripoli. But the whole premise of us bombing the daylights out of the Libyans was a false premise too. Gaddafi was borderline psychotic by some people's measure, but he was bringing the Africans together. He'd given up the people who had been responsible for Pan Am 103, which was one of our airliners that crashed, I think, in 1988 after it was bombed in midair. Bomb went off over Lockerbie Squat.
Libyans who
had
planted
the bomb, and it exploded over Lockerbie because it was delayed in Frankfurt, and it was a time fuse, and it was supposed to blow up over the Atlantic, and just because it got delayed in Frankfurt, they found all the remnants, and they killed people on the ground. 270 people, I think, died that day.
So did it blow up? It was in the air?
Yes.
Okay, but it was over land or
Yeah,
close to the ground?
It was over Scotland.
Where
It was over Lockerbie,
okay.
Scotland.
Lockerbie, Scotland, okay.
So if it had been another half hour, it would have been right over the middle of the Atlantic.
So still a terrible tragedy because the people on board would have died, but it wouldn't have caused any problems on the ground.
No. And so Libya people were, representatives were responsible for that. And so we had pushed that for many years to get them accountable. They ended up being tried in a German court, I think, because this all originated in Germany. The airline did, that flight did. So he was on. He was improving himself, for lack of a better phrase. He was not the enemy he had been.
Gaddafi.
And yet, by gosh, we're going to,
Well, that's what I remember, us going in and bombing them, and I'm like, well, this is just another, maybe kind of a nutcase ruler in the Middle East, but who really cares? All these guys have the...
But he was a nutcase that was helping people and helping downtrodden Africans, not just in Libya, but other places.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
helping them
economically.
They had oil in Libya.
And the standard of living in Libya was super good.
Really?
Because of the oil. Well, this is my opinion. I don't have a fact to show you, but British Petroleum and other European Shell Oil is actually a European company.
Yeah, Dutch, right?
Yeah, Dutch. He was nationalizing all those oil wells.
Oh.
So there was a lot of money not going into Europe.
Yeah, that's...
So who was the biggest people that were pushing this was basically the Brits and other Europeans, and that drove Hillary Clinton as the Secretary of State, and Obama to say, well, we got to make sure the Europeans get their due, and of course the somewhat infamous quote of Hillary Clinton. Yeah. He came, he saw, we bombed him, he died.
No, we came, we saw, he died.
Yeah,
I think.
It's a horrible, killing someone is like going out and pheasant hunting or something. So,
anyway.
So Libya was a mess, and if you go all the way back to the Barbary pirates of 1803, our first overseas military operation for the United
Thomas
States.
Jefferson, right?
Thomas Jefferson, United States Marine Corps, Presley O'Bannon, shores of Tripoli in the Marines' hymn.
Yep.
The Barbary pirates were still alive and well generations later. So even Gaddafi on the eastern side of Libya was not going to mess with that tribe, that group of tribes, because they were ruthless and they owned what they owned, and nobody was going to come in there without a heck of a fight.
Even though from a normal American's perspective, if we think this is all Libya and Gaddafi's in charge of Libya, whatever, that's just not how the on-the-ground reality
That's not how it was working. But Benghazi was inside that area.
So Benghazi's in the part that is the not directly controlled part by Gaddafi.
Yes.
Okay.
So for some reason we thought that would be a great place for a diplomatic facility. So there's actually a process by which you designate a diplomatic facility a consulate. That's a formal thing. So that's why they just kept calling it a diplomatic facility and not a consulate. Well, the security situation there, in when you look back on 2011, you see inverse lines on a graph. The increase in threats and in attacks, both on the British, on the Red Cross, were going up. And I think they tried to put a bomb outside one of our facilities, and it didn't go off. And then you see a reduction in security. So they're taking our security out of there. Mm-hmm. And
that's State Department decision, or it had
probably above that.
Okay.
So we were going to weaken our presence there while facing increased threats. So Chris Stevens, the ambassador that was killed that day, was essentially told, as I understand it, this is only what I've heard, he'll go out there and he'll blessed the place for being a secure compound for a consulate. Well, you don't learn security expertise by being an ambassador.
Right.
We have security guys that are experts in like what's the standoff, how many people do I need, are the locals there able to protect us? And in a misunderstanding for most Americans, I think, is that every U.S. diplomatic facility overseas, the perimeter of that, outside the wall of that compound, is the responsibility of the host nation. We don't have anybody outside patrolling the grounds or anything. That's called sovereignty.
It's a foreign nation.
It's their sovereign nation. Yeah. So, in this case, we
that'd be like would we allow Russia to patrol around in Washington D.C.? Of course we wouldn't. Absolutely not. Yeah.
So they hired something called, I think it was the 17 February Brigade, something 17, 16, whatever, and they were supposed to be the security for that compound.
Okay, this is a government or a contractor that does security.
So the regional security officer from the State Department said, "You're the best I got. Here, make sure we're safe. Make sure this perimeter is secure, so forth." That particular night, they didn't show up.
Oh, they just didn't show.
They didn't show, and
I hope they lost their contract.
Well, they got lost some more than that.
Yeah.
So so about, what was it, about 9 o'clock at night, the first attack came in on the compound, the first facility.
It's likely that this was a...
Oh, yeah.
Cool, okay.
So the two, Smith, the communicator, and Chris Stevens were there. They went to their so-called safe area. The safe area is supposed to be, well, they got smoked out, literally, the smoke inhalation and everything else. I've never seen an autopsy on either one of them. I don't know if they were shot. I don't know if they suffocated. I don't know if other horrible things happened to them. But you'll see pictures particularly of Ambassador Stevens being drug out by some gnarly-looking men with his eyes somewhat aglaze, which could mean he was dead or he was alive. And he was eventually turned over to us. But that the people that were in charge on the U.S. side of security inside the compound, not Marines, because Marines weren't even sent in there. These guys are, again, hired to be the security people. There's always a backup plan to go someplace else. So they went from
standard security protocol.
So they went from the initial attack site to one about a kilometer away. Okay. Well, they've probably rehearsed that. We probably rehearsed it. They probably were being watched when they rehearsed it. So everybody and his brother knew where their backup location was. So they get to the backup location, and they get into a real gunfight there. And again, people say, "Well, it was a spontaneous attack." It was not a spontaneous attack, and I base that on this fact. The fact is that the two SEALs,
almost 40 years of experience, but yeah,
the two SEALs were killed on the roof of one of the buildings. They were killed by mortar fire. Mortar fire, by almost any definition, is an imprecise weapon. It's not shooting a rifle. It's not even shooting a shotgun. It's a high-angle weapon, and you have to do a math equation. And I was a mortar platoon commander, so I remember all the math that goes into firing a mortar. To get anywhere close to a target, you have to know where the exact grid of the target and the exact grid where you are, and then you do the calculations about angle of fire, and then the powder charge you put on it. The third round hit center mass on top of that roof. So they had a short round, a long round, and then
find the range
and then adapt to that. But they wouldn't have been able to do that if they hadn't exactly known where their location was and do that. They wouldn't have even gotten close.
Yeah. This is well planned.
Well planned. So I voiced that that evening. I voiced it the next day.
So you were working.
I was in the State Department
in Washington.
Yeah.
Or so you're kind of on the phone supporting this. What's happening?
I've got guys that are telling me what the drones are telling them. They've got drones up, and what that looked like.
The drones are
with cameras
saying, you know, here's what's going on. Okay.
And they could only stay there so long too because of fuel. But so I immediately started telling people we need to go. We being the Foreign Emergency Support Team, the team that I led. That team has gone to places like Lima, Peru in 1996 for a hostage situation, for East Africa bombings in 1998, in which our embassy in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam were bombed. I went to that. The bombing of the USS Cole, I went to that.
This is the emergency people when something bad happens at a U.S. either consulate, embassy, or some presence overseas. These people go first to save lives, rescue people,
coordinate the response.
Okay.
Because we're supposed to be the ones that can determine it. We always said it was there to advise, assist, assess, and coordinate. That was the four verbs. A cubed C, if you will.
Yeah.
And so we would we that's what we did in all those other locations, and plus some others. And
this is including you, like, I mean, a situation like's going on or is bubbling up in Benghazi as you're watching it. Like, you're going to send like military or guns to help support these people, protect these people.
Well, our self-defense was basically our discretion more than a weapon. We just had to come in quietly and get there quietly. There was an initial argument, we can't go to Tripoli. And I said, you can't go to Benghazi. I'm not going to Benghazi. I'll go to Tripoli. And I'll help who's left there, because the ambassador was dead. And the deputy chief of mission, his number 2 guy, and the rest of it's too dangerous. Well, then I'll go to Malta. So I'm giving them all these options. We can't go. We can't. It'll be too dangerous. And I said, that's why we go.
Your job is because it's dangerous.
That's why we go. I pushed it all night into like 3:00 in the morning, our time.
And their rationale was it's too dangerous? Oh, okay.
And
hope I never have them watching over me.
There had already been an alert in European Command, which geographically wasn't that far away. We had forces in that were capable of getting there within hours of out of I think they were in Greece, I believe, somewhere in southern Europe. Mm-hmm. And they could have gotten down by C-130, which is a fairly slow airplane, but still they could have gotten going.
A few hours.
They still had
And are you thinking like if we had reacted quickly enough, we could have saved lives, saved the ambassador possibly, or it was like such a mess that we were like just needed to get there sooner to get
the latter, because and that was the other excuse was, well, you couldn't have done anything. I mean, something about, and I said, well, in the middle of a crisis, you don't know when the crisis is going to end. Right. So that could have gone on forever. We didn't know, and plus part of the team was comprised of FBI investigators, forensic people, and all that. So they would get there and immediately start picking evidence out. Mm-hmm. As it turned out, it took 16 days to get a U.S. person back into Benghazi to pick up anything. And by that time, I think a CNN reporter had found Ambassador Stevens' diary. And so they had more information than we did, because we weren't going to go in there. And it certainly reeks of somebody trying to hide something. There's been lots of people that would give their opinion about what that was.
Well, one of the rumors I've heard on the internet, and like, I mean, I have no idea how to verify this, but it passes at least the smell test to me, is like, all of these dark things in the Obama administration. One of them was this, all of the SEAL team that went and took out bin Laden just happened to be on the same helicopter, and it just happened to get shot down by a U.S.-made missile, right? Stinger missile. And one of the things that people say on the internet is that was laundered, sold through Libya, Benghazi, and that was somehow tied to that. Do you know anything about that?
I'd heard that. I don't know the facts behind that.
Okay.
I know the facts of what happened that night, and that we weren't allowed to go anywhere.
And in your opinion, whatever was the case, it sure looks like somebody might have been trying to hide something. Because if CNN's able to get in there and get the guy's diary before we are, it's like, come on.
It would appear so. And I've seen the movie 13 Hours, and based on what I know...
Is that pretty accurate?
Based on what I know of the situation, it looks pretty darn accurate. And movies are seldom like that, but this one looks pretty darn close. But, and the 13 hours goes from the time the first round hit to when we got out of there. But it was... the point was that was what our team was designed for. We'd gone to other very dicey places in our life. We had an airplane that was dedicated to that mission, a very large airplane that had all the comms in it, so we would be in communications all the way there, and had the distance to get there. But weren't allowed, anytime there's a loss of life overseas that's not in combat, associated with the State Department, they say they have to have a accountability review board, an ARB, and so they started putting that together. And I raised my hand. I said I'll be glad to testify before that. And I volunteered several times and was told we don't need your testimony.
No, yeah, we'll get to the bottom of this.
So
don't worry.
That was. They had a former Deputy Secretary of State, and they had a 4-star admiral that headed that up, and I think they were told what their conclusions would be. And nobody, I think one person might have been transferred, but nobody was held accountable for that. And, again, when you talk about 4 people died, the number itself seems small in today's math and today's situation, but there were 4 people that were trying to do their job. There's 4 people that were allowed to be in a situation they shouldn't have been in.
Yeah.
And nobody came for them. And then there was a F-16 detachment in Italy. And when I testified with 2 other guys, regional security officer and the deputy chief of mission, who took over the embassy when the ambassador was killed. And the deputy chief of mission testified. He said, well, if you fly something about getting them, armed F-16s and all this sort of thing. And he says, well, if you fly an F-16 at Mach 1 at 500 feet, that whatever you're doing, you're going to stop doing. So, the point is we needed to have some show of force, even if it was somewhat of a misinterpreted show of force.
Yeah, the point is, okay, if there's all these guys are attacking the consulate or the facility, and a jet, these super loud things fly really low overhead, you're going to interrupt their thought process or whatever.
You're going to buy some time.
Well, that's fine, but anybody...
But they weren't allowed to go either. They weren't allowed to.
Oh, they weren't allowed to go either, yeah. Oh, so the whole thing is okay, maybe it was inevitable that something bad was going to happen, but... Actually, that's not even the case, because what you're saying, if the intelligence leading up to it had been properly assessed and responded to, we would have either increased security or gotten out of there.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So at some point you had to do the whistleblower thing.
Well, it took. That was September of 2011. In March, I was approached by the Senate or the House Government Oversight Committee to possibly testify, and I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I know. I'll tell you the truth, because nobody else has listened to me, so I'll go to Congress." And I did that quietly, and they finally said, "Well, we want you to testify, and we want to testify on 8 May 2012."
So the politics of what can happen here is just, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but Congress, there's a lot of bad press about this. Someone is stirred up in Congress and says, well, we're going to get to the bottom of this. And then so they start doing their own research and find out that, oh, you're one of the guys who might be a subject matter expert on it. So they start talking to you directly. Now you are saying, yes, I'll testify to them, but what could be happening is there's a certain, on the executive branch, State Department side, of people who want to keep things hidden. So you are potentially falling afoul of your chain of command or power players at the State Department, the Obama administration, that sort of thing. Is that like, I mean, that's kind of what happens in Washington, right?
Well, that's what happened in this case. And okay. So they asked me to do that, and they gave me a tentative date. And I had to go overseas. I went to Africa and had to do some stuff over there, and I came back. And, this thing is approaching, and it's the 8th. So now it's the timing. And
is this public information? Is it like all the gossip in your office, or is
it
not
secret?
At all. And then,
in fact, no. I let we had an acting secretary, assistant secretary for counter-terrorism. He was filling in for people that were going to come in later. So I told him, I think the Friday before, I think it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday, the 8th of May was. And I told him what I was doing, and his response was, well, what can I do to help? And which kind of shocked me, but he was not part of the higher up establishment, so he was sincere in that. And I said, well, I just want to go testify, and I want to come back to my job. That's all I want. And so, that day,
the official position is like, oh, of course, it's always fine to do that. But
but I think he was a decent human being.
Well, but it's not. I mean, if you make the wrong people angry, like it doesn't matter what he thinks. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, and that was proven later. So he comes in. We testify. It's about a 6-hour testimony that day, and we each told our story. And mine was, we had a team that could have gone. We had a team that, in retrospect, could not have prevented those deaths, but in retrospect could have immediately started holding people accountable on the ground and elsewhere. Going through the evidence and going through all kinds of other things we could have gone through, the intelligence apparatus, and we weren't allowed to. So, and then on that following Sunday, after 9/11, after Benghazi on 9/11, Susan Rice was up there on 4 or 5 networks saying this was a spontaneous attack. Nobody's at fault here. It was these. We shouldn't have showed this video that inflamed the Islamists and all this other.
Yeah, of course, it's our fault that they, like, these bloodthirsty people started shooting us. Yeah.
So that
early manifestations of woke. Yeah.
That got under my skin too. That was a lie. Yeah. And she's telling it to millions of people. So when it came time for me to testify, I didn't have any problems doing that. But my conclusion from all that was that congressional hearings are where the truth goes to die, because nothing came of it. They made a separate Benghazi committee. That was oversight. Then they had a separate Benghazi subcommittee.
That's how I know if nothing's going to happen, is when Congress makes a committee.
that was run by Trey Gowdy.
Except the J6 committee. That one really, they worked to fry me. So that, I guess maybe they do get something done sometimes.
But Trey Gowdy ran this other committee and even subpoenaed Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't stomach watching it or listening to it that day. So I literally went out.
Why not?
I just knew it was going to be the same rubbish.
Not true, lies.
And so I went out and I was literally, I had a workout area in Georgetown it's called the Georgetown Steps, which if you watch The Exorcist, it's in the Exorcist movie, and it's these really steep steps, and I just kept going up and down.
Go up and down. Blow off some steam. Yeah.
Till I got a call from
Hillary Clinton probably has that effect on a lot of people.
Till I got a call from a friend saying, "Did you hear this?" I said,
I already knew it.
I don't want to hear it. And basically, she was allowed to say things like, well, it was just, that team's just a communications team. They didn't need communications. Yeah. And so she's downplaying it. And rather than having having come back and say, well, no, it's been tested. We've got testimony here that this team was a robust team full of all these different kinds of experts that can assess, evaluate, coordinate, and all that other stuff. And nobody did that. They just let that go. Like whatever Hillary said was the gospel.
Yeah, you don't want to offend the Secretary of State. That's like a major.
And that was her other.
She'll send the CIA after you. You probably end up dead.
But that was the one where she says, at this point, what difference does it make? That's the quote from that hearing.
Yeah.
And that's the one where I did about 10 more sets of steps after that.
Yeah.
So,
It's like, what is justice? What's the value?
So that was 2012, and things didn't really. 2013 is when I testified. It didn't really start getting ugly till about 2014, where we got a new permanent assistant secretary. And
okay, so you've offended some people, but you still got your job.
Still got my job. It seems like everything's going fine, but they're just stacking the deck in the meantime, and they stack the deck by
People are so wicked.
getting this person in charge that brought me in and basically says, and she made the stupid quote of like, we're gonna write so much bad paper on you. You'll have to leave government. You'll have to leave with your tail between your legs and all this. And I said, game on. So.
You didn't back down.
No.
Good.
I'm kind of bad at that.
Yeah, make them fire you. I'm with you.
So So then they took me out of the job I had.
You're like a bulldog.
They couldn't take.
Very appropriate for the Marines.
They couldn't take. My rank away, but they could take my duties away. And to take my rank away would have literally probably taken a congressional act or something. But
yeah, it takes a lot of work.
A lot of work. But they could write bad paper on me and say that he's worthless and he's worthless and he's worthless. And so they took me out of the job.
Conniving.
They took me out and they put another person in, and she wrote bad paper on me.
And in Washington, this is a huge deal because you're the civilian equivalent of a general in the state. I mean, like that's major responsibilities, major impact, major budget, all that sort of stuff.
So I went through the protocol of what happens when you're treated like this. What are the options you have? And I go through that, and then that's what led up to the
that really made him mad. I bet
led up to saying, well, we got no other choice but to have our own attorneys, and so that's when my wife got with Linda. And just by the grace of God, again, we ended up good friends with her. She's a marvelous woman. Went through a lot. Went out to her place in the Shenandoah Valley and all that sort of thing, and got. But the point is that she had this law firm of 3 guys in Georgetown that took her case, and all they do is whistleblower stuff.
No, they're probably hated by the D.C. Circuit courts,
and so they
hate all.
So
American
they would not have taken my case if I'd just gone up and said, "Please take my case." It was Linda's advocacy that got that, and so it was on Veterans Day 2015. I walked into their office, and told my story, and they said, "Okay." And they're not cheap, and you got to have so much money up front. I paid all that, and frankly, they gave me a good deal because, long story short, by the 10th of June, 2016, we had come to an agreement, out of court agreement, that said, you'll get all your evaluations fixed to reflect your performance. We'll make sure your security clearance is still there. And
so why is that stuff important to you? Like, you've been in the game, you're getting close to retirement. Does it have an effect on your retirement pay? Is it about no, it's just wrong that you're trying to say that this was all bad performance, and that's just a lie.
Yeah, well, the latter, because eventually if I want to go do anything else, that's still on the record.
Yeah.
So I got that all fixed, and then like get out of town money, some of that. So, but they said you got to be out by. This is on the 10th of June. You got to be out of the building by the 30th of June. Okay. So we had already planned on coming back to Iowa. We had already planned to build a house here and sell the house we had. The timing probably couldn't have been better in that regard, but so we came back here and got settled, started getting settled in July of 2016. So it took 3 years of that to get done, and in the process, the mission that we had for that team and guys that I would literally die for just went away, because we don't want anybody that particularly during the Obama administration, have somebody that was have a group of people that was that capable, that could go out and that team had gone a lot of places doing a lot of good things around the world. We'd saved lives. We been in Nigeria and Ecuador and the Philippines in hostage situations. We were in the Middle East for a weapon of mass destruction event that we thought was going to take place that did not, but we had to deploy on that. So it's I regret not being with those guys anymore, because there's a book by Sebastian Junger called Tribes, and his assertion is that PTSD is more caused by not having the same group of people that will back you up all the time. And when you get back to the civilian world, that doesn't happen too many places. And so you come back and you go, what am I doing? And who's backing me up if I want to do something? And who can I go talk to about anything at any time of day? And those are pretty rare outside that closed society. And
it's got years of miles together, and
it's the book really grabbed my attention. And that's kind of where and to us, you have to find your tribe. We all have to find our tribe, no matter where we are. And it's not just guys; it's gals, and my wife has lost friends because of my efforts, and she's even lost family. Like we're not going to talk to you anymore because you might be of this ilk or whatever. So it's not just me that's taking a hit, but when you take a hit, you pick yourself up, just like Teddy Roosevelt says, and you get back in the fight.
Yeah, I mean, so what keeps you fighting? Like, I mean, you probably got money saved up. You could retire right off into the sunset, and it seems like somebody must have infused American patriotism into your bones, because you can't seem to give it up.
Well, I mean, I was raised by great parents. Very simple yet sophisticated people. They were simple in the case of they didn't put on any airs, but they were very wise and intelligent and caring. And my dad taught me how to be a real man, and my mother taught me how to be a gentleman. And between the two of them, here I am. So
I mean, if we could just give that to every child in America, that probably would solve 95% of the problems that are.
Well, I think so, because our family, we can't legislate a good family.
Right.
We can't do that, and I tell that to the groups I talk to. It's like, well, why aren't you fucking working on this? Well, if we don't have families who have decent jobs, who are going to the church of their choice, then we don't have much. In fact, one of our colleagues there got a PhD in education, and he said they did a study many years ago at the University of Iowa, and said, what's the best predictor of a well-grounded child becoming a well-grounded adult? And of course, my first thing was nuclear family, mom and dad at home. No, that wasn't it, according to the study. The study was they go to church.
Interesting.
And even a single mom or a single dad taking their child to church kind of demonstrates to the child there's more to their life than just the old man or the mom. There's somebody else. Hey, what are you doing? And that sort of thing. So I found that pretty interesting. But because we've when we don't have those, and then again, I look at my hometown of Eagle Grove. there were 2 clothing stores, there were 4 car dealerships, there were 2 grocery stores, 2 jewelry stores up and down Main Street, and now it's it's not that. Let's just say.
So my brother lives up in Center Point now, and he was sending me, I can't remember if it was newspapers or like the year in review or something book that had been published in maybe the 60s. Center Point. Center Point had like 4 hotels, tons of prosperous shops, and now there's no hotels. There's a truck stop on the outskirts of town. It's still a nice little Iowa town, but it's what has been stolen from us in the last 3 or 4 generations is just and you can't put where did it all go?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, small business is a great part of that, because if without that, you don't have the families. Like you go to Garner, which is just up 69, where 69 and 18 intersect up there. Mm-hmm. They have Stellar Industries, they have IMT Industries, they have a couple other small businesses. Mm-hmm. That place is a model. I mean, for a lot of things, but it's the small business that does that. And
I'll tell you, as an employer, so my main job is an internet company that me and my dad and my 2 brothers run, and the best people to hire are those whose parents own their own business.
Yeah,
they're so smart, they're so creative. They don't think in a box. They're just fantastic.
Well, and up there, they had a couple that passed away, and the couple were thought of as these misers that didn't, that were so tight with their money and everything. Mm-hmm. Well, they were tight with their money until they wrote their will, and the will said all these. I don't know how much, but it was a lot of money. Mm-hmm. The interest off that will go towards a high school student that graduates in good standing from high school out of Garner. Mm-hmm. And there's thousands of dollars that's given to a child. Mm-hmm. You could argue they earned it because they studied, sure. And they stayed in school.
Okay.
And so you attract people. That's a big attraction. You go to Garner, I dare you to find a bad-looking house. I just dare you.
Huh.
And it's because everybody takes pride in that. They want their children have that kind of bump up, if you will, as they leave. I've talked to the superintendent up there. I've talked to the industry people up there, and it boils down to leadership. I went to Stellar right before Christmas, and wanted to just see what they do up there. Mm-hmm. And they basically modify heavy pickups like F-350s, F-450s into commercial trucks. So they got they can change tires, or they can have a big toolbox on the back,
the flatbed on the back, or whatever,
all kinds of stuff. So they do that modification, and
that's like Featherlight in Cresco. Featherlight's like world-class trailers.
Yeah,
just
trailer.
Little Cresco, Iowa.
Yeah.
And they do fantastic, just amazing work.
So they, but I was there over the Christmas, New Year's time, and he says, well, we give everybody holidays off. We just have the maintenance guys in here now, making sure the paint machines work, making sure the welders work, making sure all the stuff is maintained and it's ready to go.
Wow.
But that was cool. But what struck me also was every time we met somebody, they were a maintenance guy, said, well, hi, George. He knew everybody's name. Oh,
yeah.
And as I'm leaving, I said, about how many employees do you have? Because they go international. I mean, they export stuff. I think they've got a facility in Kanawha, which is about 15 miles southwest, and other places. It says, well, based on the Christmas cards I signed, about 800.
Wow.
So, he didn't have
he signed 800.
I mean, but that's what it takes. And
well, wouldn't you love to work? Wouldn't everybody love to work with somebody who cared about them like that?
And I'm trying to help one of his employees get his wife and family out of the Philippines right now, and he'd jump on a grenade for this guy.
Wow.
I mean, it's is a very tight organization.
Wow. And so you're in the legislature. You're saying, the government can't be our solution for everything, right? The government cannot legislate us into strong nuclear families, strong whatever. But Declaration of Independence says the government's job is to secure the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So what's the government's role? Like, how can in Des Moines, what you're fighting for in Des Moines, how does that fit into the bigger picture of just a, peaceful, prosperous Iowa?
When I know, I'll let you know.
Yeah. I will just say, I think your presence as just a patriot and a man of God does make a difference, and you have weight there. I hear people talk about you, so.
Well, in some of the things we do, or we contribute as much not passing bad bills as we do passing good bills, and we had an over-the-counter birth control bill a few years ago, and it's like, well, you're a guy. How can you talk about birth control? Okay, well, I do anyway.
Too bad. It's your job. You're a legislator.
So, anyway, the point I made was this was a human trafficker's daydream of being able to coerce a girl.
Get her addicted to heroin, then feed her birth control, and
get her into the pharmacy, and not have to have her see a doctor, because if she sees a doctor, she may spill her beans.
Right. Yeah. You got to keep these people isolated. Yep.
So that was one, and there are other ones that I voted against a bill that expanded the hours of drinking at Des Moines Airport. It's like, why are we even having this bill? Like, you need to drink more at the airport. And
people love to drink at the airport. It's tailgating at Iowa football games and airport. You can drink anytime, and somehow it's socially acceptable.
And so there's those, but
Why does that fall under your jurisdiction? Can't they let anyway?
It's
okay.
There's a lot of things there, and I've suggested, and there's 150 egos there. Some are more fragile than others, and the more fragile the ego, the more defensive people get, I think. And
that can be really hard.
And so there's that. And in my perfect world, which I don't live in, it's we would pass the budget first. That's the only thing we have to do as a legislature every year is pass a budget.
Okay.
Then all the other stuff would come after. That doesn't happen. You could argue that you don't make good decisions after 33 hours of no sleep.
Yeah, and just so little background. I was with Mark Cisneros last night at a fundraiser for Brad Sherman, and he was just talking about what these guys just went through was the end of session came, right? End of the legislative session, and then it passed, and they were still held in session. So everybody working in Des Moines in our legislature isn't getting paid, is under incredible pressure to pass a budget, because the budget is what all the money of the state is tied to. And what ended up happening was you guys were in session trying to hash out the final details for 33 hours straight.
Something like
33 hours straight, which means you're awake before that, you're awake after. You're almost 40 hours consecutive, no sleep. And this is the conditions under which we're asking our legislators to make wise choices about our, budget and just closing the session. So anyway, I just wanted people to know that. Yeah.
And while not defending that, I do know that the 150 egos is what drives a lot of that.
And that's the House and the Senate.
House and the Senate together. Mm-hmm. The Senate and the House, unfortunately, have not agreed on enough things this year. But I also know, you can. There's all kinds of different people down there who say they're Republicans and say they're Democrats. But the phrase I came up with was all alliances are fluid, because I can disagree with you strongly on one bill, but I'm going to need you next week on another bill, or we may just coalesce on that one. So
I've seen. I mean, like it's kind of you don't think about it unless you're paying attention, but like you guys got to work together every day.
Yeah.
You got to go to the office together, and then when there's all this pressure from the public, from the media, from everything to get you to dig in and entrench on a side. Well, you need to hold firm to your convictions, right? There's a lot of things that you have to have a iron will to stand up for, but it's very challenging to do that in such a way as you don't burn bridges with people who you actually need to work with for the state to function, right?
And I see that every day, and that's just human nature. If you're going to hold a grudge because somebody disagreed with you, or they didn't vote the way you wanted them to vote as a constituent or whatever, then it's not going to go well.
David Pausch comes on. He was on here. He's running in the primary for he's
Miller
running
Meeks.
Congress. Against Miller Meeks. And he said, I can't remember the study he was quoting or whatever, but he said something like 80% of health problems that we have can be tied to their root cause is unforgiveness.
That and sugar.
And sugar. Probably true, yeah.
Alcohol, whatever, yeah.
Sugar, alcohol.
It gets very frustrating some days. I think we've got our majority leader is. I told him he did a great job, and it was somewhat akin to.
It's Bobby Kaufman.
Navigating a battleship through the Strait of Hormuz while avoiding mines. Mm-hmm. And that's about the best metaphor I could come up with. But I really meant it. There's just a lot of people that have an agenda, and you'd like to think that agenda is noble and worth going after, and so when they're very tired of me applying a human trafficking context to everything, which I don't, but I mean I do a lot of times, and when I see people down there saying our rights are being violated. And I'm going, what if your child was being physically violated? Wouldn't you be more anxious about that? Right. Or maybe that makes more sense than a possible constitutional right being violated.
Well,
and that's what we're trying
to do. That is a constitutional right being violated. Liberty. But that's why we exist as a country.
But just the human part of that you would do that to a child and get away with it repeatedly. Yeah. Or that child would be violated 12 times a night, every night, for ad infinitum. Mm-hmm. So I try to remind people of that. And but we got the law passed in 2023 that upped the penalties to a Class A.
Yeah.
For a child being trafficked.
That's something like we should hear the story of that again, because that was a really big victory. And it was just shocking to me when I started hearing about when you guys. So before this, it wasn't even a felony to traffic.
It was like a Class D.
Class D, okay.
Which is basically shoplifting at Walmart.
I mean, come on. Like, how did it come to that, or like? Was it just...
I had talked to two guys that I really have a lot of respect for that had worked in the human trafficking arena in Iowa and elsewhere, and they said, the laws are just they're anemic. So
well, I just remember people saying like, yeah, if there's anything to do with trafficking of people in Iowa, it better be a federal case, or it's not even hardly worth prosecuting because people are just getting a slap on the wrist.
Well, that doesn't exist anymore. So in 2023, I took basically the language they gave me and said if the victim's under 18, you go to jail for the rest of your life, and if you're over 18, 25 years without parole. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, we've only had one conviction under that law.
Well, yeah, but you guys, and that was one of those things that if I'm remembering correctly, was unanimously passed.
In both houses.
In both the Iowa House and Iowa Senate, which is like, if you look at things, how they've been the last 6 months is basically a miracle.
Well, but I allowed myself to pat myself in the back for about 30 seconds, and then I said, well, we don't have any way of enforcing this.
Exactly. Okay, that's one of the things that really pisses me off about the government, because there's like spiritual forces of wickedness, basically, that want to keep people enslaved. So there's layers of this. So please explain to us some of the things. So just because there's a law on the books doesn't mean somebody's enforcing it, right?
Well, it's one of the most complex crimes there is. It's almost like RICO, you know, and you got to have all of these things put together to get a case. In human trafficking, it's one of the few crimes where the victim and the perpetrator want to become anonymous and invisible. The perpetrator, for obvious reasons, and the not only embarrassment but a big money maker, and then the victim has been so abused over so long that in most cases, he in some cases, is like, there's no way I'm going to tell anybody.
Yeah.
And so
I'd rather just disappear. But
that came home to roost with my wife and I this past summer. We got a call on Father's Day. I got a call from a lady who helps victims, and I told her, I said, if you need someplace for them to stay, then they have no place else. Our house is available.
Wow.
So on Father's Day, we got this call.
Oh, wow.
So I went down by Des Moines and picked this young lady up with her baby, who she'd had 3 days before by C-section.
Okay.
And I had no idea what to expect. I expected somebody who didn't even want to be in a vehicle with a man alone. I mean, that's what my expectation was.
Yeah.
I got just the opposite. I got somebody that wanted to tell her story to me.
Wow.
And I didn't ask any questions. And here we got a 3-day-old baby, you know, in the process too. Yeah. And so we get home, and I mean, she's telling me, again, you know, it was one of those God things, God moments, because she'd been on drugs, and she'd been off drugs. She was very proud. She'd been off drugs for 7 months.
Good for her.
So I'm doing the quick math, and I'm going, well, that's about two months of pregnancy.
Yeah, that's about 2 months too few.
And I said, has she been checked? Oh yeah, she's been checked. So she gets home. She's obviously exhausted. The baby's in a new environment, both out of the womb and in a car going 100 miles, and you know, so baby's kind of fussy, and she's exhausted. So I ended up holding her.
Yeah.
And getting her to sleep after midnight, and so mom could get going. And but you know, every morning I'd have coffee. She'd come out and start talking to me, and it just reinforced. You know, she'd started this at about 16, and she even told her story at this Safe Center event in Des Moines a couple weeks ago. So I'm not telling anything out of school here, but you know, she'd had other pregnancies. She'd been, you know, told that's what she did. I mean, the environment in our house was so abnormal to her that she couldn't get her head around the fact that I would say yes, dear, to my wife, and I would, if she asked me to do something, I would do it, and you know, just the mutual respect and all that sort of thing that she wasn't even.
That's like some of the things I realized from this.
So I and the baby that, you know, was now growing and getting her own personality. So then we had another girl that came up from the same place, basically. The place that was holding them told them they couldn't come back, or was helping them, they couldn't come back. And that's a whole nother long story. But
that's one of the things that Mandy Shivers talks about.
Yeah, Mandy was the person who called me.
Oh, really?
Mandy's the one that called me.
Mandy's been on here. I love Mandy. She's so wonderful.
So it's the human trafficking sorority fraternity thing here. So
you know Austin Stubbs too.
Not well, but I know
he works for Dorothy's house. Yeah, he's running for state house.
Yeah, so it reinforced that we have we have local law enforcement that is not up to the task. We have county attorneys that aren't up to the task.
Yeah.
Local law enforcement, if you tell somebody you have to do an investigation for 6 months, a month, they don't have the resources for that. They got other stuff to do.
Okay.
I've gone to...
Yeah, I mean, these people are just trying to manage a city. Yeah, they got
or a county or whatever.
Okay,
and so they don't have the resources. They don't have the time. And so when you tell them, well, this is going on, well, what's the evidence? We can't get a search warrant and, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So the bill we passed out of the House this year, 89-0, unanimously, was to have a focused team of investigators, prosecutors, and victims care people, the proverbial triad, because all those people have to work together.
To bring a case.
And under a common superior who makes all of them cooperate. So not just this guy does this over here and this guy does this. Yep. It's three organizations that work for one person who makes sure they work together.
Yep.
And it's...
that would be Department of Public Safety or... Well, no, it's...
Well, Department of Public Safety says we don't have a problem. So...
what was your what were you going to create? Was it its own thing that reports
focused only on human trafficking?
That reports directly to the governor, or did the prosecutors have to go up through the attorney general?
Well, in my mind, it would be, that's the point, that nobody goes through anybody other than the leader of that team. Conceivably, that leader of that team should come from Department of Public Safety, but there's a little hitch there. Mm-hmm. A year or so ago, there were 2 people dedicated to human trafficking in the Department of Public Safety, mm-hmm. and 65 in our casinos, doing whatever they do in casinos. Department of Public Safety, Division of Criminal Investigation people who are trained investigators, doing the business of casinos, paid for by casinos, but still holding the line item, if you will, holding the position within the Department of Public Safety. Yeah. So we're giving up 65 people to do that. This year's budget, mm-hmm. it went to 68 because we needed another casino, of course, mm-hmm. and that's now got 3 more people in it. And they took the 2 people that were in the human trafficking mm-hmm. full-time employment, that's FTE, and they moved them to the intel area. So we now
paid for
have
by the casinos is kind of a joke because, well, guess what? I have a business and I pay taxes and I pay for public safety resources, and I don't have a cop in my front door.
Well, and ironically, or not so ironically, the casinos don't care for it. And my point is, go to Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Those people are private security people, and if somebody breaks the law, they call the cops.
Yeah,
that's what I would think.
That's how every other business works. And
what this is a special deal that I'm going to try to break.
Yeah, so the way to do that, right, is just cut the statutory requirement that assigns them to these specific businesses, the casinos, right? Just give the governor or whoever the Department of Public Safety reports to the freedom to take these 65, 68 personnel and assign them to whatever's most needed, which if we are intelligent as voters, we're going to elect the people in that actually care about ending slavery, trafficking in Iowa, and that'll happen. Just like that.
It's just like that. Well,
I'm just glad that the first thing is somebody did the work to figure out actually how that plan would need to come together. You got the law passed. Okay, yeah, it's incredibly frustrating that this is not done. But 10 years ago, there was no plan. People didn't even acknowledge there was a problem. So.
Well, I use the word political imperative. This has to become a political imperative. In other words, your political life, your political future is contingent on where you are on this topic. That's where I want to put it. And that's where I'm going to be working between sessions here.
Well, would you mind just giving, you don't have to tell people how to vote if you don't want to, you don't have to give an endorsement if you don't want to, but help us to think through our governor candidates. and because they would have a big impact on this, right? Like governors got to like have a role in enforcing trafficking and stuff. So like, can you tell us like, as far as the trafficking issue, at least like, do we know what each one of the 5 candidates think? Are there some that are better than others? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
This is one of those things where if you have a discussion with anybody, they say, of course I'm against that. Of course I'm against that. It's putting the resources towards it.
Yeah.
And the resources actually have to come out of the legislature.
Okay.
Now, can the chief executive of the state influence that? Sure. The current governor doesn't think it's a problem. The current DPS director doesn't think it's a problem.
Kim doesn't think it's a problem.
The current head of the Senate Judiciary Committee doesn't think it's a problem. And that's where it died in the Senate, was the Senate Judiciary Committee. So, I've talked to...
And these are all Republicans?
Yes. And I've talked at length to Brad about it. I've talked at length with Lane about it. I haven't talked to anybody else about it.
Okay.
So, there's no pushback, obviously. But my point again is, of all the things, the basic decency of this state is just flushed down the toilet, if I can use that, by saying, well, we're not going to worry about this. And when you and I'm sure you've heard or seen Grid Shock. And Grid Shock, that's just 3 Iowa young ladies, one of which came...
Did Stacey Besch do that?
Yeah. One of which came from, by all accounts, a very wholesome nuclear family, loving family, and she made one bad decision in college, and she was
just sucked
into the vortex of evil. So... It exists. Have you heard of the Johnny Gosch case?
No.
Okay, Johnny Gosch, if you go back to 1982, was a paper boy in Des Moines, and he didn't come home.
Oh, wow.
And the book is Why Johnny Can't Come Home, and his mother wrote it. And his mother has been a champion. In fact, this summer I want to sit down and talk to her. And then you talk about the Franklin scandal. These 2 books intersect. The Franklin scandal is about the Franklin Savings and Loan in Omaha, which Nick Bryant, he's a good podcaster too. You should get in contact with him sometime also. Nick Bryant wrote that book, and he thought it was just about the embezzlement of $39 million out of the Franklin Savings and Loan in Omaha. No, there's a guy by the name of Lawrence King who worked there that embezzled $39 million, but in the course of investigating him on the $39 million, he found out he was running children as sex slaves.
That's the source of the revenue.
No.
This
was a side job.
Oh, wow.
And he was very big in the Republican Party. Supposedly was the national anthem singer at the 1984 Republican National Convention, and he was providing, in most cases, boys and girls to wicked people.
Yeah.
So
this is
Johnny Gosch probably got into that vortex as well, as near as people can tell. She has never given up. She's in her 80s now.
This kid, he literally never came home. Disappeared.
He'd be in his 50s right now. He was 12, I think, in 83. So, yeah, he's in his well into his 50s. So
I delivered penny savers and gazettes when I was a kid.
Well, the local police did not do anything good. They basically accused her of being, a wackadoodle, and she's still. I've listened to her. She's in her 80s. She's a very compelling person, and I want to have her part of my efforts in the future. As well. So that tells you it's been going on for decades. It's not just like this new phenomena.
Yeah.
And I heard something on the radio today that I've thought for a long time. How could anybody do that? And after seeing some of the, particularly I guess people from Hollywood, but anybody who's got a lot of power and a lot of money, they start believing they're untouchable, and the common enjoyments of a nice house and a nice car and a nice boat and a nice whatever or a nice vacation and all those things just aren't good enough. We gotta have something else that's really we have never done before, and they get into this again evil mindset.
It's what Paul calls a reprobate mind.
Yeah,
like you are a slave to your sin.
And if you go to 3 out of the 4 Gospels, Jesus says, if I'm paraphrasing, if you mess with a child, it'd be better that you have a millstone wrapped around your neck. You're being thrown to the bottom of the sea. That's not Moses. That's not Abraham. That's not King David.
Yep.
That's Jesus, this nice guy.
Yep.
This really, really nice guy is saying that. So I think, there's these things about what are the unforgivable sins, and one of them is like denial of the Holy Spirit or something of the existence of God. I think it's worse than that. I think anybody that would do that to a child, that's an unforgivable sin. Yeah. You can't get back from that.
No, the penalty is death.
So, but we have a case now in Adele, this woman who originated in Wright County, Amanda Goff, had 2 daughters that she trafficked for years and
Her
years
own
and
daughters.
years. Yes, often, more often than you think. It's like 30 or 40% of children that are trafficked it's with a family member doing it. And a constituent of mine called me last February and said, these children have been taken out of the home because they're being trafficked. And, oh, by the way, they've got certain diseases from that. And why isn't this woman in jail? Good question. So I went to the Health and Human Services director. She, at the time, Garcia, obviously put some oomph into it, and she was arrested.
You need some more water?
I'm fine.
Okay.
She was arrested, and it just now is coming up for trial. But again, multiple counties ended up in Dallas. Why those other counties didn't do something, I don't know. I have my opinions, but so I heard in the news that she was going to plea out. So I asked my counterpart Carter Norman to ask the county attorney what's going on, and so the county attorney literally drove to the Capitol to talk to me, and I had Judd Lauer, who you know.
Yeah, I know Judd. Judd's great.
Judd, as the former prosecutor, was there to be the brains of the outfit.
Okay.
And we got an explanation from him of where he was going with this and how he was navigating it.
Yeah, he's like, this is why I'm offering a plea deal.
And Judd was happy with that, because the end of the story is not, let's just say the end of the story is not in Dallas County. We'll put it that way. So I went to the...
okay, so this guy's giving testimony against somebody else?
No, girl. This is a woman. This is a mother. And
okay.
So anyway, that's ongoing, but there's a lot more than that. And we're catching people, and DPS will tell me that they have these task forces, but they're ad hoc. Like when we need somebody, we'll go to this area and we'll put a task force together. Well, if it's a large metropolitan area, yeah, maybe so. Mm-hmm. But Wright County, no. They don't have cops all over the place being able to do that. No, nor do you want somebody investigating this that doesn't understand the victim.
Yeah.
And this is not like I got mugged last night or somebody T-boned me at the intersection and you have an interview. This is like you may not be able to talk to that person for months because of her mental state.
Right.
And you don't want to make it worse.
Yep.
And then the prosecutor is the same way. And because, if you actually rescue somebody, and this is what bothers me sometimes about these people, well, I'm out rescuing people. What are you doing with the victim when that victim has to go someplace where they are taken care of?
That's another thing Mandy likes to say or remind us of is like, well, yeah, there's getting to be more of these recovery centers. But if it's a 1-month program or a 3-month or a 6-month program, well, they get to the end of that, and it's like, well, you have a ruined credit, you have a probably a massive criminal record because of just you've been in that, and then you've been through a recovery program, you tried hard, you got clean, good for you, whatever, and then they just say, well, you were timed out.
Yep.
See you later.
And part of that we helped fix this year with the expungement legislation. So we passed expungement.
Oh, you guys did get that done. Okay.
So
thank you.
That got done, but it still doesn't. That takes care of the record, but it doesn't take care of the mind and the body.
Of course, which is actually the deeper,
And so that's where Mandy's coming from. And she'll do a great job.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good. So. I mean, I'm just glad. The thing is, I like your point that, like, this is not something new, right? I mean, it was here in the 80s, and it's probably goes way back before that. There's powerful people in society, both conservative and liberal, Republican and Democrat, that are involved in this stuff. But what at least gives me some hope that we're on the right direction is that, like, well, as a society, there's a significant number of people who are starting to put the dots together. Like, it's a very important issue to a very large proportion of voters in Iowa. I mean, the fact that this gets the House to vote 89-0 to get something through. So long way to go, but if we have a population that will not tolerate it to continue, then that's a basic building block of ending it.
And one of the impediments allegedly was, well, where are we going to get the money? Because by my rough napkin math, about $5 million. Mm-hmm. We spend millions of dollars on really stupid stuff. I know that we don't seem to get over. But so I wrote
that right there, that's your challenge, right? You got the 150 egos, and, well, everybody's got a reason for all that money, right?
I wrote a bill last year on remittance, so it would tax people who were sending money out of country, and it was basically going after people who weren't paying taxes anywhere else. So that remittance would go to the state coffers. Oklahoma did it the first year. Something around $50 million was collected, and so it would be at the point of transaction. So no, most of this is like an ATM, for lack of a better term.
Wait, Western Union. Yeah. You go to those. Yeah.
So last year it didn't get much.
Is this typically like foreign nationals that are working here, sending money back home?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
are they? But they're paying taxes here. They're not paying taxes here.
Well, not if they're here illegally. They're not.
Of course not. Oh.
So that's where it comes in.
Okay.
And you're not taxing. Well, they changed it this year. They changed what I wrote last year to say anybody. So it could be me or you sending money to Bolivia, and we get a certain tax on it. So I wasn't all that happy about that, but it would have $50 million, and then it said in the legislation 10% of it would go to human trafficking efforts. Well, that's exactly,
that's what you need. Boom, you got it paid for.
That didn't get past the Senate either. So we'll reattack that. That'll be in the queue before next session.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You probably never quit fighting.
Well,
you got plans for decades yet, huh?
No, actually, no, I don't. I wouldn't be satisfied sitting around just chopping wood, but I have a lot of wood to chop too. So
I don't think God made us to sit still. There's a peace that comes from as a reward for a faithful life, right? But I think we're made to work. So,
yeah.
What else do you have? Other stuff like you want people to know, or it's really interesting just to hear.
I think get involved. One of the more thankless jobs probably on the earth is school board, but that's where a lot of things go haywire.
Mm-hmm. We have a huge problem right now in Iowa City School District. Huge scandal.
And even up in my district, one of one of the towns wanted to bring in this music group that basically were all cross-dressers.
Into a school?
Into a school, and it was going to teach
What
them,
age?
Teach them middle school, teach them leadership, which I found interesting, having done a little leadership in my life.
Yeah.
Or
and where this is your
just my district, and then
small town Iowa,
the same district that.
And the school board was voting for this.
No, they didn't know.
Well, they didn't know.
But it's one of those things where I found out about it. I wrote the superintendent and I said, "Can you enlighten me on why this would happen?" Mm-hmm. And I don't have children in that school. I don't have grandchildren in that school.
Just tell me the story. Listen, I need to understand. Yeah.
Well, she was kind of messed up, and this okay. Well, again, that doesn't. So I went to the school board meeting where they called that and just sat in the school board meeting. I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And it was amazing just how many people came out in the middle of a rainstorm and walked up to my pickup. Thanks for being here. Well, I needed to learn what was going on here.
Yeah.
And even then, it was a little bit of like, well, that isn't really. And the same school had a woman that said some disparaging remarks about Charlie Kirk's murder, which were completely inappropriate. And the same school district had a teacher who formed a romantic relationship with a 14-year-old female teacher, 14-year-old, and then the victim didn't come up until 18, several years later.
Okay.
And that woman is now in federal prison. That's official. She's in federal prison. Mm-hmm. But, when people say, well, it's not, and it's kind of like, this is Iowa nice. Well, there's Iowa nice, but there's also Iowa evil, too, just like there is in any society. Yeah. And that's like saying,
And some of our evil is often done under this veneer of the nice, and that is just not acceptable.
And we had a coach where my grandchildren do go to school, who was forming inappropriate relationships with female runners, and didn't get caught until one of the victims' father looked at a cell phone. And as it turned out, when you brought that person's name up, you'd say, "Oh yeah, I heard that years ago." Okay, if you heard about it, like we're talking decades, over a decade ago, this numbskull has been doing this, and I'm going, well, what? Again, the natural question is, why didn't you? Well, don't want to rock the boat, and I'm going, and I'm saying. So that's what I mean about being involved. If something is like that is happening, then and the good news is we have a woman lives across the lake from us up there, who immigrated to this country, married a guy from New York. They were down in Florida, and decided, well, we want to get out of this rat race. Where can we go that we're not in a rat race? Well, Iowa. And he can work from home and all this. And they were homeschooling their child, and the child, I really want to go to school. Well, went to school, and then I can't even remember the topic, but it was just completely inappropriate for like a science class or something. Whatever. And it had nothing to do with, and it was some level of perversion. Yep. And again, I talked to the superintendent. Well, and this woman wrote a letter to the school board, attended the school board, got, I think, Moms for Liberty involved. The legal.
Love Moms for Liberty.
Yes. Samantha Fett helped me with that.
Yeah.
And
old Samantha.
And she didn't even mention the teacher's name. Mm-hmm. And somebody hired a lawyer to give her a cease and desist order
Mm-hmm.
on a complaint that wasn't even named. No one was even named. So
How are you going to cease and desist?
well, I think the lawyer mentioned it in the. So it's like
yeah, you know exactly who we're talking about. That's an admission of guilt.
So then the Moms for Liberty came rolling in and said, the lawyer who wrote like a 7-page thing about, well, here's free speech, here's this,
Mm-hmm.
here's this, mm-hmm. here's this. Oh, by the way, and we just need to get back to the basics.
We got to, and we have to take ownership over our schools again. This idea that you just kind of let them run themselves is that's obviously false. And what you guys have done with educational freedom in Iowa is that's pretty cool, right? There are more options now. We're expanding and but that's still no excuse for us to just allow our school boards to be just disasters, either morally and financially. Cedar Rapids and Iowa City right now are in the news for just they got big problems because
the first
just basic things.
The first level of responsibility, though, is the citizens of that community and the parents of that community.
Yeah.
If they're getting blown off or whatever, then we do. But the thing that we have to pass a law in Des Moines to fix.
Yeah,
the ailments.
You guys just won't be able to do that. Right? Des Moines is inherently going to be clumsy when you're dealing with Cedar Rapids or Pella or Mechanicsville or whatever, Clear Lake. Now, there are things that, you got to have some overarching guidelines that we have, the state can take action maybe to if something's, criminally messed up or whatever. I could see that. But, if we don't own this at the local level, there's just only so much that Des Moines can do. Or Washington, for that matter.
So, it's the 10th Amendment says basically everybody has their rights unless, and it's delegated down. Not up.
Yep. Which requires us to actually do it.
Yeah.
Which means if we don't, then the vacuum of authority does suck things to Des Moines and suck things to Washington, which then it's not appropriate for you to complain about that, American or Iowan, unless you are doing your God-given duty to execute your civil authority. The government is God's servant to do you good, it says. So if you are a voter, you are the government. So do your neighbor good by the way that you vote and by the way you participate in civics.
And all authority is derived from the consent of the governed. And if you're not exercising that, then, just like this primary that's coming up, how many people know about that?
Yeah.
Not enough. And if you're not engaged in that, and then the other thing is also treat news like you do a car, shopping for a car. Mm-hmm. Do you go to the first guy that offers you a so-called deal? Well,
hopefully not.
That's what the news is now. Mm-hmm. And if you want a whole story, you're going to have to take some time to look at the both sides of the issue.
Yep.
And most people. I learned this phrase not too long ago, confirmation bias.
Yes.
I've already got an opinion, therefore I only
tell us about how this works in media, because there is an actual this is
but actually politics too.
Yeah.
And John Q. Public, we had a story the other day about in one of the publications in Iowa that painted a story a certain way, and it was very, very wrong. It was very, very inaccurate, and yet they said that it's a conservative institution. We can believe that. Well, there are people who have agendas.
Yeah, and so just for people to know, confirmation bias is when you're told something and then you're fed different sources that confirm the same thing. So you're kind of looking for what you already believe to be true, and then you tune into the media channels or your friends or whoever to confirm and make you feel good because they're saying what you already believe, right? Am I saying that right? Yeah.
Oh, and in some cases, don't even go those extra miles. You just hear what you want to hear, and say, that's it right there.
And that's all. That's the end of the story. Yeah.
No more research, no more anything.
No more research. Yeah, you get, and like if you don't become an active participant, and if you don't choose to humble yourself and face the facts when you are wrong, or dig a little deeper when you hear something that contradicts your stated thing, rather than just arguing with it right away, you are going to be in a prison of your own deception, and you're just never going to get out.
Yep. So it's unfortunately there's plenty to do.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping we have a good primary. I'm hoping that the Mideast comes to a peaceful conclusion, because otherwise it's going to be an ugly November.
Yeah.
And you watch Promethean action and all
Mm-hmm.
that, and you get an. That's kind of that. I'm bordering on confirmation bias there, because it's all this has got a great.
I want to just share with like we were talking a little before we started recording. So Promethean Action is this online news outlet that has some commentary about what's going on in Iran, and there's some monologues that this woman does that are pretty insightful, I thought. But like you'd have to watch them and just kind of draw your own conclusions. But what she's basically making the case for us of what's going on in Iran is only a little bit about Iran. It's really much more about global financial power players, more or less, and sort of realigning global economics, global power structures in a way that's more healthy for the United States. And so it's tied to things like financial power players in London and other places in Europe and things like that. So is that a pretty good summary of...
And plus the fact that we are energy self-sufficient in places like Europe and East Asia aren't, and that's where all their oil comes out of. And by controlling, by not letting anything through the Strait of Hormuz, you have that's what's jacking the prices up. Even though we're self-sufficient, in our own energy needs. So
it's a global market, but you're hopeful, like that. You're saying like, okay, let's say we can get this to a peaceful conclusion. If Iowans get out, and across the country we get out and are faithful in our duty to vote with wisdom, you're seeing some positive signs.
But it's contingent on people doing the work of research too.
Yeah.
And again, people your age and younger are raising families, and they're taking children here and there, and they don't have the time to research this stuff. And you ask them who the governor is, and it's like, I don't know. And I kind of get that, because even when my wife and I were raising our children, I voted, but it wasn't like I was informed to vote. I mean, just things like we get to reaffirm judges every year. We ought to do the research on the judges that we reaffirm. So there's other things that...
and most of us, if you put your attention and your mind to it, if you can't be the person that knows, you got a young family, whatever, and you're just not plugged in, or you're just not called, maybe you don't know it. There is somebody, I bet, in your circle who you need to ask, or multiple people you need to ask about politics, and begin to listen and form your own opinions. Because if you don't do that, you're just like, you are... from the government, the ruling perspective of this nation, you're a liability for the rest of us, because you're asleep at the wheel. And that means that you're easy fodder for deception, easily manipulated, so we need you to wake up. So find ways in your own rhythms of life, either change your rhythms of life, or find ways to talk about politics with people. Like they may not be the most popular opinions, but listen to people in your circle at the baseball game or whatever about what's going on in politics. And you need to, if you don't inform yourself, you're going to be deceived.
Yeah. Well, it's it starts at home, and running for office is nothing I ever expected to do, because I spent most of my life trying to be invisible and not be seen and not know what I was doing. And now it's like I got to talk about myself. So my wife keeps telling me I'm doing a bad job at that. So
I think you're doing good. And I try to zoom out where we are in Iowa, look back 10 years or 15 years ago. Well, we're more awake. we're fighting, we're trending, moving averages wise in the right direction, I would say. I mean, a lot of the things you guys have done with just freedom, tax relief, like getting the educational freedom and getting the transgender stuff out of the civil rights code. Like, I mean, those are big wins, and, there's always more to be done. But I just appreciate that you and a lot of the other patriots in our legislature and our governor's office, I mean, like we can complain a lot about Kim, but there are some wins that we've got, significant wins in her tenure. So I thank her for that. So if you don't mind, I'll pray for you and we'll wind down here. So Father, I just ask your blessing on Mark, his family, his district. I pray that you would give him everything he needs for his campaign. I pray that you would make him a man of weight and influence in Des Moines, that you would give him the power of the Holy Spirit to enact righteousness in our laws and our policies. Would you give him the attention of his fellow legislators to be influence just the changes that need to be made. May wisdom and righteousness take hold through what he does on his committees, on the caucus, and everywhere he goes in the Capitol building and in his capacity as a representative. I pray prosperity over his family, over his home, over his campaign. I pray that you'd bring the voters, the volunteers, the whatever, everything that he needs to put that together, the finances, all of that stuff, Lord, and just that he would have your peace that surpasses all understanding on the inside. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Thank you.
That was amazing. Mark, I have one. Can I ask you?
Oh, yeah. We got to hear it.
You have stood so boldly on biblical truth. Like when it comes to transgender identity, when it comes to sex trafficking, when it comes to homosexuality. How have you been able to maintain courage in a modern era where those things are treated like standing for the unborn, standing against this crazy transgender lifestyle, standing against homosexuality is seen as hatred?
Well, I mean, some of the forums, which I don't always like to participate in, because at the forums, it's a disproportionate amount of people who have that viewpoint. Like you hate people. No, I don't hate people. If you want to live your life a certain way, I try to let it just roll off my back. I mean, I've been hated before. I mean, I've fired people as a Marine officer who were doing horrible things, and in fact, it's kind of a long answer, but it kind of resembles what we're doing now. I had a master sergeant who, before we were deployed overseas, said he had a girlfriend in Korea, and I said, Master Sergeant, you're married. Well, and I thought it was just kind of like he was being a blowhard. Well, we got to Korea, and literally he had a Korean teenage girl up against the wall, kissing and making out and all this other garbage in public. And I pulled him aside the next morning and I said, that's going to stop. Oh, you can't. Yeah, I can, because you there's something called moral leadership, not just other, military leadership. And he pulled it again, so I fired him. Didn't ask anybody if I could fire him, and that made the battalion commander look bad, and not bad, but like uncomfortable. But for like 2 months, 3 months, enlisted Marines would go to the other side of the street rather than meet me and have to salute me. So, I've kind of been to that part before, and then when they finally figured out this guy was a complete knucklehead, they figured it out. But, and it's a lot about how I was raised. I mean, my mom and dad were, I've outlived both my mom and dad. So I think every day is a gift. My mom died at 59 from fighting cancer for 16 years. When she went in for her first operation, I was like 9. And the remark she made, well, Mark, pray for me. You know, I'm 9 years old. No, sure, Mom, I'm a 9-year-old. But it made me never want to disappoint them. Never want anything ever to disappoint them, my behavior or whatever. So I was a good little goody two-shoes in high school. Jackie and I met in high school. She kind of felt, she had the same mindset that I did, and it turned out okay. 48 years of marriage. But that, I saw my dad, how he treated her and how he'd do anything for her to make her well. And it didn't, she lasted 16 years probably because she had a very strong faith, not because, the doctors did a great job. And back then, there wasn't a lot they could do. But I remember, I didn't talk about, when I got out of high school, I'd gotten an appointment to the Air Force Academy, and which took a lot of effort. And
yeah, you got to have a congressman, right?
Yeah, H.R. Groves, who predates both of you by a long shot, but H.R. Groves, we had 9 congressmen, 9 representatives in, and he was a very taciturn.
Really?
Yeah.
Iowa had 9?
In 1974, they did.
Huh.
He was he was the guy known for the getting rid of waste and everything. He made his political statements about, we're wasting money here. I found it. We're going to end that. And so that's kind of what he did. And so he had me go through the hoops of all the things you got to do that. And so I made it there. I enjoyed it. I mean, it was tough. I wanted the challenge. I wanted I said, well, I can get paid to fly an airplane past the speed of sound. How much better could that be? And that was kind of my mindset.
Yeah. Sounds pretty good.
I'm 17. I'm going, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I get paid and I get to exceed the speed limit. And by my end of my freshman year, I'd taken 3 calculus courses, 3 separate calculus courses. I was on calculus 3. I flunked calculus 3. They were going to kick me out. And they said, well, you've been a really good cadet in all these other areas. We'll put you on academic probation. You'll take the calculus course over during the summer rather than go on leave, and you'll start your sophomore year, which I did. In the sophomore year, it didn't work. They kicked me. They academically kicked me out. And I remember being extremely disappointed with myself. And Mom asked me, what are you going to do? I'm going to enlist in the Marine Corps. No! The typical mom. I mean, my dad served in World War II in surface ships in the North and the South Pacific. So
Navy?
In the Navy, and she, worried every day about that. And they weren't married at the time. They got married a month after he got out. Mm-hmm. But so, going in the Marine Corps, and so she said, well, you can get, I said, Mom, I studied my butt off, and I didn't get where I wanted to go. It wasn't like I was goofing off. I studied and studied and studied, and it didn't work. So I don't want to do that anymore for a while. I want to go do this. And so well, why don't you go to get through college, and then maybe you can go after get through college. And, the last thing I ever wanted to do was upset my mother. So I did it. And Buena Vista was hard up for students, very hard up. And I had a 1.4 GPA. And they took all my courses that I'd passed. So I had 60 hours after 3 semesters. and they took like basic cadet training. I'd gone to jump school. They took jump school as an academic course. They took survival school as an academic course. So I was like, I got 60 hours. So.
Probably more valuable than most academic courses today.
But when I went back, I got the letter in December of 1975 to go back and check out, and Mother in her infinite wisdom, motherly wisdom, put a note in there in my luggage. And she said, we know you've worked hard. We know you've done your best. And you're leaving with honor. And because I told about the people who had violated the honor code and got booted and all this. And she says, you're leaving with honor. You keep, as long as you have your honor, you're fine. And so that's what drives me. So, and they were married 35 years. My wife and I have been married 48 years. They were not by any means rich. I can remember overhearing a conversation once saying that they had $100 between the two of them, and like one savings account in the bank, and they had $100, so raising 3 boys on 240 acres. So those are the things that keep me grounded, I guess. Yeah. It was a little funny watching, not funny in a funny way, but funny in a weird way. People get a little sleep deprived, and they just turn into,
Monsters.
I told him. Dude, nobody's dying, nobody's getting hurt. Just.
Well, that was basic training for you. You're probably just echoes back to like military days.
One of the best things I ever did was survival school.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
And that was taught by guys that had just gotten out of North Vietnam, and and the one of the things that stuck with me there was you can have everything taken away from you: your food, your clothes, your physical comfort. What they can't take away from you is a good attitude if you want to have a good attitude. So. Be the weird one in the room and have a good attitude.
Yeah, why not?
So I'm kind of like, hey, how you? I'm doing great. How are you? It's like, is it gonna make it better if I gripe about how sleepy I am? Probably not.
Mark was talking last night about how after so many hours, some people start to take their shoes off, and then the ties come off, and then shirts get a little unbuttoned, and it starts to smell a little bit like a locker room in there.
I didn't smell that, but it was people's reaction to one another. It's like, how dare you? And then somebody gets up, somebody much younger than me. How dare you question the validity of this bill we're trying to pass? You've only been here. I've been here 10 years.
Oh,
and he's half my age. And I'm going, okay.
Okay, dude. Yeah.
He didn't understand. So.
How dare you?
How dare I question you? You're such a wise one.